We have the quarterback of the Kansas State Wildcats, Big 12 champion Will Howard.
So excited to announce Kansas City Sports Network's new soccer channel.
They're taking advantage of a look that they utilized earlier in the game to show the jet sweep motion.
It's a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise.
You kind of root for guys to have those moments, and that was certainly a big moment.
Welcome into Mizzou, that's really your podcast from Missouri Athletics here on KC Sports Network.
Welcome, everybody, to the Border War podcast.
Welcome back. Another episode of Ain't No Season podcast.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
It's a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC. And yes, we are going on during the match. I don't know why.
Oh, darn.
Oh, man. I'm so sad about this.
That's Craig Stout, by the way, in case you didn't know.
Hey, you got me this week. Thanks,
Hold
buddy.
up. That is the reigning champion of Youthful Regis's latest game, Craig Stout, to you, sir.
Yeah, that bonus point was helping Craig Stout live right.
You know what? I feel like we should play another game. I just feel like, for whatever reason, luck is on my side when Youthful Regis is on this podcast. I don't know why, but I don't know if it's favoritism. No, Youthful Regis wouldn't do that. But yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, one of these times I would love to get in there with one of these Youthful Regis games, but it's just unfortunately our schedules, you know, a lot of overlap. We can't make it work. But when I watch it back, it's nice to see Craig come out on top here. You had a chance, buddy, and
I did. And honestly, it's the little details that keep you from achieving a championship. There's some little details that kept the Philadelphia Eagles from winning a championship in February. We'll be talking about them today, as well as the Las Vegas Raiders. We'll be talking about a really good football team and also the Raiders. This could be a fun episode. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are doing what they do best in a championship type setting, beating a team from San Francisco. Currently whooping Steph Curry and Klay Thompson up and down the golf course.
it's not fair. Clay doesn't know where he lost his boat keys.
The best part of this is Mahomes has definitely had a few bounces, and the whole NFL is probably tweeting out, "Of course Mahomes gets that bounce. Of course that ball falls there." No, he's just
Brandon Graham is blaming the fairways right now for why Patrick Mahomes is having success.
Or is he talking about his acting skills?
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. This is going to be 100%. We're going to be just bitter, and it's not even bitter. We're just going to be clapping a lot here. I have a feeling on this show. But thanks to everybody that's hanging out. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Appreciate y'all for coming through. We are doing our season preview game by game, team by team, more like it, because obviously the Chiefs play a couple teams twice a year. But we are starting this beautiful day, this beautiful episode with Week 11 Monday Night Football against the NFC's best. That wasn't good enough in February. The Philadelphia Eagles. Craig, what's the quality of the roster that wasn't good enough to beat the Chiefs?
I mean, you say it's not good enough, but it's really damn good. Like, this is the team in the NFC. It's rare that we get through an entire offseason that we don't basically, kind of re-rack a lot of the teams. Sure, when we look at the AFC, the Chiefs are always going to be contenders, going to be near the top, but you can, justifiably make cases for rosters to maybe have a shot, sans Patrick Mahomes, of contending in the AFC. The NFC this year, the Eagles absolutely had another hell of an offseason. They added a whole bunch of guys that are going to be major contributors. They've retained a lot of the talent that was really good. This is a really good football team that got better. And I really, the rest of the NFC, I feel like just kind of went, it's their year this year. We're going to let them have all this. We're going to let them go all in, going to take all these swings and let them have the best roster in the NFC, because it's I don't think it's particularly close. I'm curious what you guys think, but I think this is easily the best roster in the NFC.
I think they'll have some competition, right? Like, I think it depends on what happens with San Francisco's quarterback situation. How does Purdy return to form? Do they get some kind of jump from Trey Lance? Because I think that's a good team. I think the Cowboys have a solid roster as well. If I'm going to be honest, like, they might be right there with the Eagles, and they played them pretty close when they played. It's like, I think there's some competition, but most likely, I think the Eagles are going to be the best team in the NFC. That seems like the most logical thing here. I do think they lost some stuff, though. They lost their right guard from last season, and they're replacing him with Tyler Steen, from Alabama, who I think we all assume is going to be pretty good. We all kind of liked him, but that's still, somebody switching up on an offensive line that was a very big strength of this team that they are going to have to work into. I also believe they're going to have a little bit of shakeup there on the interior, and then on the defensive side, they lost both starting safeties. And yes, they drafted Sidney Brown. They brought in Terrell Edmonds to replace them. But a pretty good strength of them last year was their entire secondary play together. And then we saw them against the Chiefs. That secondary was picked on a little bit. And so now you're going to replace two stronger guys on that unit with, Terrell Edmonds, who's always kind of been okay, and then a rookie. It could be a little bit of a growing pain there for them. So there are some question marks on this team. Same thing. They also lost, I believe, both starting linebackers to free agency. Now, they had drafted Nakobe Dean last year. They have guys to fill the shoes, but they did lose some players. So they have a chance to be better for sure as they gel together, and this roster is exceptionally good. But I think there's a chance you could see a small step back just in the continuity of some of these positions, or with some of these talented but new players kind of stepping in to take the roles of guys that clearly played well together.
Yeah, all things. Without being, silly. This is a ridiculously talented roster. This is a very good football team with a lot of talented players. On paper, it looks even better. You look at like a Jalen Carter, and we'll see if we'll get to him, I'm sure, at some point here. But this is I think it's really well built. Like, I mean, you give credit to Howie Roseman because he's got a lot of talent, and on paper there's a lot of talent. Like some of these guys, you could see Brandon Graham or Fletcher Cox start to fall off a little bit here. You never know when they get on the wrong side of 30. But on paper right now, it looks like a super talented football team, and it definitely is. It just wasn't good enough to beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. What's the quality of this coaching staff? Do you think that that's part of the reason?
I mean, listen, Jonathan Gannon, for all the derision that we as Chiefs fans can probably, kind of throw his way, was pretty good for this defensive roster. Got those guys to really play, line up, play at a pretty high level for most of the year. Moving on from him, and yes, it remains to be seen what he's going to do from a head coaching level, but Sean Desai coming in, playing that role, there's a lot of growth that he's going to need to have. Yes, he was a defensive coordinator with the Bears, in 2021, but hasn't really been, holding down major positions in the NFL for very long. Now, all of a sudden, he's got a lot of really young, talented players that he's got to maximize and get the most of. And it's been a long time since basically he's come in, had to do that for a lot of guys. Last year, he was the assistant head coach and defensive assistant for the Seahawks. Before that, before he was the defensive coordinator for the Bears, he was a safeties coach. Now he's got a lot of guys in the front seven that are young, that are going to need to grow into that role. How does he get the most out of them? How does he get his coaching staff to get the most out of them? That's the number one question for me, because I think that was, as awesome as Jalen Hurts was and as great as that offense was, part of the reason why they were so formidable was how great that defense, and specifically that defensive line, was. Are they going to continue to live up to that with a new defensive coordinator? Yes, Nick Sirianni's still around, but are they going to continue to live up for that and really continue to play at a high level with somebody who's coming in from the complete outside the organization and trying to get them to play that way?
I mean, and it's not just the defensive side. On the offensive side, they lose Shane Steichen, and he's being replaced by Brian Johnson. And Johnson has been there as the quarterback's coach. He was last year working with Jalen Hurts. But before that, he was the offensive coordinator for one season at Florida. Now, it was Kyle Trask's big explosive year for the Florida offense, over 4,000 yards, like 43 touchdowns or something. So like he had a really good year as that offensive coordinator, but that was kind of his only experience doing that at the calling the plays, kind of controlling an entire offense. And that also comes with Dan Mullen, who still does kind of run that offense in general. So this is kind of a big step up for Brian Johnson, going from a guy working with just a quarterback to his only essential second year of being an offensive coordinator, kind of having the reins. I don't see Nick Sirianni as a guy that's going to take over a lot of that duty from him. He seems like he's the type of head coach that wants his coordinators to run their side of the ball so he can, manage. And I don't mean that derogatory, but like kind of manage the rest of the team. So Brian Johnson's got a lot on his plate now. He's replacing Stain Steichen, who absolutely lit the NFL up with that offense. What he did with Hurts and that offensive line and the way he designed that offense was nearly flawless for what they had. And now he's got big shoes to fill. And now you have the entire NFL's kind of on notice. Like if you go back and think to Patrick Mahomes' first year starting, how he torched the NFL, and like he's not necessarily slowed down, but teams clearly adjusted for what he was doing. Brian Johnson now gets the hard part. He's got to deal with teams adjusting to what the Eagles did. I don't think teams are that interested in spending all summer looking at what the Chiefs offense is doing anymore. They've done it for 5 years. They don't have the answer yet. But guess what offense they might be able to find an answer to? The Eagles, because no one's had a summer yet to look at it. So it's up to him to kind of deal with those counter punches and adjust. And I mean, I'm not saying he's not ready for it, but we haven't seen it. We don't know what that looks like where he's got to come in and kind of adapt on the fly.
I think a big role that, that they'll have as a staff is just to help kind of continue to facilitate the development of Jalen Hurts too, because you talk about all this and offensively and schematically, there's definitely some things that teams are going to pick up on and teams are going to kind of look a little bit harder at, and they're going to probably make some, they might be making some different decisions and calls to keep the Eagles out of 4th and 1. Fourth and, maybe they're a little bit more aggressive in some of these third down situations, and that's where it could fall on helping develop and facilitate the development of Jalen Hurts. Because if he can, play at a high level, that can help alleviate some of the, growing pains that they might experience as teams have had a little bit of look at him. Maddie, you have something you want to throw in here?
I do. I wanted to ask you, what do you guys think the state of the Philadelphia Eagles equipment staff is at this moment in time?
Still reeling, still trying to figure out what cleats to use. Right. That's what's happening.
I don't know what adjustments they've, made. I'm sure they've made some personnel adjustments, but one thing's for sure, they definitely have some studs. Let's take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Thanks everybody hanging out. I think Craig Stout has left the building after that incredible joke.
Terrible joke.
Oh, that was good. I don't know what you're talking about.
That was like Brandon Graham level of joke right there.
Oh, no. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad.
I mean, look, behind the scenes, our producer here, Nick, gives you a 1.3 out of 10. So that's generous.
That seems 1.2 too high.
Correct.
Nick is a new addition to the KC Laboratory, and we're going to talk about the new additions of the Philadelphia Eagles. Give me one, Craig.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Nolan Smith, guy that we loved in Kansas City, a guy that for a hot minute, a lot of us got really excited about coming to Kansas City in the NFL draft. Goes to the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a home run pick. I have zero doubt in my mind that Nolan Smith is going to come into this organization and play at a high level. The mentality is great. The effort level is great. The production is going to be great. And he gets to shift into a defensive line that has Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Jalen Carter, Josh Sweat, Derek Barnett, Jordan Davis, Hassan Reddick. I mean, good God. Like, this man gets to come in and basically be a tone setter, be a leader on the field as a rookie, which I truly believe he'll be able to do amongst a murderer's row of defensive linemen like those guys. He's going to be able to slot in. They're going to be able to continue to throw waves at opposing quarterbacks. I think that Nolan Smith is the guy that when we look back on this, that we're going to go, oh, that's why they eventually let X player go in the future here, maybe in the next couple of years, because Nolan Smith is going to get to, maybe a defensive end one level pretty quickly. And on this defensive line, that is really scary for them to have added him.
So for me, I was going to go with Jalen Carter, kind of right there next to it. But that's too low-hanging fruit. We don't need to talk about Jalen Carter anymore. He's a stud. We all know he's good as long as he stays on the field. So I'm not going to take that one. We're going to go with a little bit of a sleeper here. Olamide Zaccheaus, wide receiver, came over from the Atlanta Falcons off of a career year for 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, nothing groundbreaking. But what I think he's going to do for this offense is, instead of having Quez Watkins just running skinny posts and seam routes and then maybe dropping the ball in, let's say, the Super Bowl, they're now getting a reliable slot wide receiver. They're getting somebody that I think can work, along with A.J. Brown or along with Dallas Goedert as kind of that safety net, that safety blanket for Jalen Hurts, whether it's over the middle of the field, just someone to kind of work short to intermediate. He's a reliable slot receiver. He can do a lot of these gadgety things. So if they want to get into more end around stuff, getting a few more screens for non-AJ Brown type wide receivers, I think he's a guy that might actually add this extra element, this slot possession wide receiver that does a little bit of everything for them that they didn't have before. It's just another reliable option that if this offense does have to alter its identity a little bit, throw the ball a little bit more, I think he's a guy that could have a sneaky, impactful season for them, even if he only ends up, again, around 400, 500 yards. But I think it could make a big difference.
I'm going to go with the Georgia Bulldogs. I know Craig just brought up Nolan Smith, but I do want to just speak on a couple of the character risks that the Eagles might have taken here with Jalen Carter, with Kelee Ringo. I think both of those guys are, Kelee Ringo is a guy that, was getting some round one buzz at one point. I think when we talk about looking at this team on paper, I'm coming back to this, but we talk about looking at this team on paper and look at some of these veterans and some of the leadership that they have. When I talk about roster construction, the thing I really appreciate it is they've got old veterans that still have something left in the tank, and they're helping facilitate the next wave and issuing the next wave in of young talent with good leadership and infrastructure around them. And I think if Jalen Carter is going to find success, which apparently he was off a lot of boards,
Mm-hmm.
If he's going to find success, it's going to have to be a place like this. Kelee Ringo, there's some concerns there, but there's good leadership around him too. They took big swings with the draft capital they have on potential blue chip players. If they hit, look out. They might come close to beating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl again. Players to watch, Craig.
Yeah, I'm going to stick in the cornerback room and go with James Bradbury, a guy that was very late in the process last year, an addition for the Philadelphia Eagles, and was a second-team All-Pro, was legitimately terrific for them in their defensive scheme. What are they getting from him now? They obviously signed him to a new contract this offseason, kept him around for a little while longer, but a guy that, did not look good, particularly good in New York, and really kind of struggled to make an impact there. Is this kind of a spike where you see one great year and he ends up getting paid because of it, or is he going to continue to thrive behind that elite defensive line? I think that he's a guy that they are definitely hedging here. They added Greedy Williams. They added Kelee Ringo behind him. They are hoping that him and Darius Slay can kind of continue to mentor and bring along these new guys. But he is one that I'm keeping an eye on to see if the level of play that he played with is sustainable in this defense with a new defensive coordinator, new safeties around him. Is he going to be able to play that well? Because they got guys that are waiting in the wings that they're trying to move on and have a youth movement behind him. Can he continue an all-pro level season?
I'm going to steal this one from his number one hater, Kent Swanson. We're going Jalen Hurts, the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Number one
Don't
hater.
Don't let Kent talk down about Jalen Hurts. He was an exceptional quarterback last year, but I think it's different when you get to play the chip on your shoulder, when no one's ready for you to take that big step. Everybody saw that he was getting better towards the end of the year before and through that playoff run. And that's why he was, I believe he was my Super Bowl pick for the NFC actually last year when we did that prediction show, if not the NFC Championship game. So I thought he was better, but I didn't see that season he had coming, but now he's the guy with the target on his back. Now every team in the NFL wants to go beat this guy that was the MVP runner-up, this guy that almost won the MVP, almost won the Super Bowl with this different style of game. His game's different than a lot of other quarterbacks that are playing right now. Now, every defender, every defensive coordinator wants to beat him. How is he going to adapt? How is he going to change his game? What is he going to learn? Something 2 years ago he was terrible at was kind of like throwing the ball over the middle of the field. Came back last year, pretty darn good at it. Like, he already made one change, but what does he have next? Or is he not going to get there? So, like, I'm intrigued to see what happens with Jalen Hurts going forward, because I do think he is going to have to adjust his game again, and I'm ready to see him take that step. Or did we see him peak already? Did we see his Cam Newton year? We don't know.
Yeah, we do.
No, we don't.
Just kidding.
I love Jalen Hurts. Don't let Kid talk bad about it.
Listen, you seen his squat? I would never say a negative thing about Jalen Hurts. He could just crush you.
It's a joke,
especially
man.
You, Kent.
It is just
especially you.
We haven't seen this team beat the Chiefs, but if they were to do so, how would it look?
I mean, just playing a complete game. This team has the talent on the defensive side of the ball to affect the passer. And that is the way that you're going to beat this team, is by disrupting Patrick Mahomes. And you look at their second and third line defenders, and it's still kind of scary what they can do to affect the passer. So it's definitely somebody that can pressure Patrick Mahomes routinely, can get after him a little bit. And the offense is definitely good enough to score points. It is just simply playing to their potential, and they can give the Chiefs every bit a run for their money. This is one of those teams that if they play an A- game, not even an A+ game, an A- game, and the Chiefs play a B- game, I think the Chiefs could lose. There are very few teams in the NFL that I truly believe that about. This is one of them that could clip the Chiefs by not playing a completely perfect game.
Brendan Graham did. Oh, go. Sorry. My bad.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it seems pretty simple, right? Like, the weather's better so that they don't have to, adapt and overcome elements and deal with adversity. So they get perfect weather and the perfect field, but only for them, not for the opposing team. No, just for them. They're the only team that gets to play in the perfect situation. And then they can beat the Chiefs. Then all their pass rushers can all of a sudden, get their feet in the ground, because the Chiefs pass rushers and players didn't deal with the same field. No, just them. So they get that going for them. That helps. And then, Jalen Carter turns out to be a stud and can replace Hargrave 1-to-1. And Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick all continue to have, and don't have the same years last year. Nolan Smith steps up, and all these guys can come in here and rush the passer, really well. It gets pressure on the Chiefs. They have the team built to beat the Chiefs, right? They can get pressure with 4, and they have the talent on the back end to hold up. You just got to hope you don't play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl where Patrick Mahomes goes absolutely insane in the second half and just is better than you.
On a bum ankle. That's the one little, oh, sorry, my bad.
He was acting.
Yeah.
He was acting, though.
I forgot.
He was acting.
That's a good point. Yeah, I just hope 5 years from now, the farther removed we get from this Super Bowl, how much we talk about the fact that Mahomes did this all on a high ankle sprain when lesser quarterbacks couldn't sniff doing that, what he did. Just, the way the Eagles beat the Chiefs is they treat it like their Super Bowl, because it's the only time that they're going to have a chance to beat the Chiefs, because it's the regular season.
How'd that go last time?
How did that go last time? Buffalo. Who's the Chiefs non-Mahomes MVP though, Craig?
Jawan Taylor. You want to talk about being able to step up and stop an elite defensive line and give Patrick Mahomes the time that they need? You need to play at a high level. The Chiefs offensive tackles, despite what some may say, played ridiculously well in that Super Bowl, were part of the reason, field notwithstanding, part of the reason why that team was able to do what they did in the second half. Jawan Taylor was brought in for games like this. This is why you pay a right tackle the kind of money that you pay, because you want to be able to leave him on an island to pick up the waves and waves of rushers that are going to be coming off the other side of the field. So Jawan Taylor, this is a key game. He steps up, plays at a ridiculously high level. Mahomes is going to get all the gaudy stats and everything like that, but we might look back at that performance and say, oh, yeah, that's why they paid a right tackle $20 million.
Did you know that Travis Kelce's yards per target and yards per reception against the Philadelphia Eagles were his highest of the playoffs last year? Did you guys know that? Did you know that he was exceptional in the Super Bowl? In the place against his best defense, this defense we're talking about that's so good all over these places and how they can shut the Chiefs down. Travis Kelce went for 81 yards on 6 targets and a Tug-alicious. Like, that's all he did. So you're going to sit here and tell me that he's not the non-Mahomes MVP when these two teams line up again. He's dealing with these backup linebackers trying to replace the starters, when he's feasting on Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmonds at the safety position for this team. This defense has exactly one weakness, and it's right up the middle of the field. That's where Travis Kelce lives.
Kadarius Toney running circles around the Philadelphia Eagles, presenting nightmares like he did to them in the fourth quarter.
You sure it's circles, or is it just one simple pivot cut?
I don't know.
Because they seem to struggle with that too.
It was enough.
I think it was a cute triangle.
Oh, you're right.
We're going to take a cute break, and we'll be right back after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Hey, we got a few spots left in the KCSN golf tournament, just so you guys know. There are a few available. Go to givebutter.com/KCSN. You'll be able to find a link there. It's in the link in the description of the show as well. But we are going to have all kinds of great stuff. I believe we're going to have a trick shot artist out there. I believe there's going to be a long drive expert out there at one of the par 5s. Mission Tacos providing the lunch. You're going to get pork tenderloin sandwiches, I believe, while you're on the course. And they're incredible. Just trust me.
Top notch.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a really, really good time. There's a few more spots left. $500 a team. All the money goes towards the KCSN Foundation. Make sure you sign up before. I think we only have a couple spots left. So might want to do that. Link is in the description of the show. Well, the Patrick Mahomes is winning heavily and handily again in Vegas. They're going to have to change the name of the Wynn Golf Course to Allegiant. And that's where Patrick Mahomes will be in Week 12 against the Las Vegas Raiders. What's the quality of the roster?
Man, if I feel bad going from the Eagles to this team because they're not the worst roster that we're going to talk about, but my goodness, it's such a big drop off here. They got some defensive ends that can affect the passer. They really do. I think that's a good element. They have Devontae Adams, who continued to have a terrific year with Derek Carr as his quarterback, but there's not a whole hell of a lot else that I get excited about when I look at the rest of this roster. There are individual pieces that I think are good to okay, but there's not as many game changers and game breakers on this, nor is there kind of the floor of the roster that you would hope within the AFC West if they realistically want to compete. I look at this team and I say, okay, they're a team in transition that didn't fully make the transition over to trying to get into the youth movement to try and improve their roster significantly for the next 3 to 4 years. Instead, they're kind of in between, trying to hope that Josh McDaniels can turn this around. It's just a lot to put on this roster as it stands. Frankly, it's just not to the level as some of the rest of the AFC West, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this roster exactly. Their offensive line looks like a train wreck.
Ugh.
And that's significantly better than the linebacker room and probably better than the cornerback room. Like, I just don't know what's going on here. Like, listen to these names: Robert Spillane, Divine Diablo, Luke Masterson, Darian Butler, Curtis Bolton, Amari Burney. Like, that's linebackers on this depth chart. What are we doing with that? What?
I like Divine Diablo as a safety. Now he's their Mike.
Yeah, he's their Mike, and he's going to be flanked by Robert Spillane.
Travis Masterson on that 70s show?
Well, it's a Luke Masterson, but yes.
Luke Masterson. Yeah.
It's I just don't know what we're doing, right? Like I just don't know what's going on with this team. I can't even say it's bad because I just don't know. I just don't know what's going. The quarterback situation alone has Jimmy Garoppolo goes there, but then he doesn't go there because he maybe fails the physical, but then does go there. I just don't know what's happening with this team. I don't. That's the state of the roster. I just don't know what is going on.
Neither does Mark Davis. Like it's a mess, and like I know that they're trying to build this team in the image of what Josh McDaniels wants, but like you're right. I don't think Josh McDaniels knows what Josh McDaniels wants yet. Like they're just kind of they're rebuilding on the fly, but they're not. I mean, they didn't have anything to rebuild. Like I don't know. It's just kind of moving on from one wave and on to the next. It's bizarre roster construction. It's not a good football team. It's not a good roster, and I love it personally. What's the quality of this?
Okay, hold on real quick. I agree it's not good, but like if we come out and say that Max Crosby plays at a defensive player of the year level and you get a good Chandler Jones year and Jimmy Garoppolo returns to a New England-esque thing under Josh McDaniels and they have Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers and Hunter and for like Josh Jacobs, like there's enough potential star power that they might not be bad despite having one of the wonkiest rosters I've ever seen, right? Like there's enough there. There's enough there. It's weird.
But this group's done nothing. This group's done nothing with a better quarterback. Like that group
maybe.
Oh, that group you just talked about hasn't done much with a better quarterback. Derek Carr's better than Jimmy Garoppolo.
I agree with Kent. Yeah.
I actually think in McDaniel's system, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a better quarterback than Derek Carr. I don't know what stats are going to say by the end of the year. I think for that particular system, I actually don't think Derek Carr was particularly good for it. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo is better in that system, assuming he's healthy, which who knows? That's part of the problem.
I'll just say this. There are props out there for Jimmy Garoppolo's over under on passing yards in like the 3,400s. I think the under makes a lot of sense. That's all I'm gonna say. What's the quality of this coaching staff, Craig?
I mean, listen, we're now in year 3 billion of trying to figure out if Josh McDaniels is a head coach. Like at this point,
that's your answer.
It is. It kind of is. Like it's taken too long. It's not turning around. There are some fun things that Josh McDaniels does. I'm not saying that he's a bad offensive mind by any means, but by time and time again, you just watch his roster either not play up to their potential or just kind of meh out of the season. And that's kind of what this is. It kind of matches up with the quality of the roster as well. And it's not like they made a bunch of changes behind the scenes to improve things. It's still Mick Lombardi. It's still Patrick Graham. It's the guys that they had last year. And while I respect the continuity, because when you sit there and you're consistently overhauling things, it rarely works out. But there was very little from last year that you looked at and you said, oh man, yeah, no, that all of those guys definitely need to be back. We believe in what they can do, especially when you didn't have a young quarterback that you were trying to develop or anything behind that. Your goal was to go out and get Jimmy Garoppolo. And you're saying, okay, now we've got Josh McDaniel and Jimmy Garoppolo. So we're hoping that maybe we can get a little bit better than Derek Carr, who was still playing well despite getting benched. I just don't see how the roster, or not the roster, but how the coaching staff really gets the most out of this roster, especially after watching the same coaching staff fail to do so last year.
Yeah, I think Josh McDaniels is a smart guy. I think he's got a great offensive system when he has the guys that are smart enough to run it. I do think it's a complicated system. I think it requires a certain level of play style and demeanor, but I think when you have guys that can do it, it's really good. Mick Lombardi, another New England guy, is going to kind of come in, or not come in, but is there. He's going to help him run it. It's like, I think the offensive system is good. The problem is finding 11 guys to be out there on the field at once, or 12, 13 as part of your rotation, are up to snuff to run this offense. It is kind of complicated, but when it works, it works. So like, I think there's a chance that Josh McDaniels still can be a good offensive-minded coach. When it comes to being a head coach, though, he's failed once before. And if he's in control of building this team right now, I have no clue where they're going with it. Like, I don't understand the building process if that's on his shoulders, and why would he leave New England for this job if he wasn't getting to build the team out, right? So I assume that is. So it looks like he might be running another team into the ground, despite, like I said, I think being a very smart offensive coach. He's in a weird spot, kind of like the rest of this team is.
I think he's a very broad offensive mind. I gave him all the credit in the world. It wasn't just Tom Brady. Like, he has a fantastic offensive mind. I think he's one of those guys that has a fantastic offensive mind and the hubris placed in the wrong place. I think, he's actively chosen to, it's either bad leadership or hubris, because he scapegoated Derek Carr and Jason Waller or Darren Waller, sorry. And I mean, he moved on from them and it actively chose to move on from talent, which doesn't work. Like, how often does that work for teams? How often find examples of that working for organizations where they're actively moving on to get worse at positions and getting
the team
better?
That he left for the Raiders.
Oof.
Okay. Well, yeah,
it's like, it's the only example. Right.
You're right. The one guy the one guy that has ever worked for
a Hall of Fame coach. Yeah.
Right. But I'm just saying he was there though, right? Like, that's his idea of what coaching is, right? Like, that's all I'm saying is, like, that's what he has learned under. That's what he has coached under, is we can get rid of the more talented player to get somebody that's going to buy into my system more so, I guess. That's all I was referring to with that.
I think there is something in that process that is just extremely misguided. The way, like, it doesn't translate, and it never has. It never has. The guys that move on just never pull it off. I think this is a bad staff. I think Josh McDaniels is a failure, and it's going to be a waste again. And it's going to be up to Mark Davis to have to figure out how much cash he's going to have to give up to move on from him. So I could see this being a long tail developmental process. And obviously Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler kind of scapegoated the past to try to rebuild for the future and treat it like a big major rebuild, because they moved on from some really talented guys and scapegoated them when their team stunk out loud last year with them. And now you've downgraded one of your pass catching weapons and your quarterback. So I just don't think highly of this staff. I don't think highly of Josh McDaniels as a leader. I just don't. And the vibes in Vegas have not been good since he stepped in there. And it's delicious. Any new additions, Craig?
Yeah. Michael Mayer's a really good football player, everybody. How he ended up in the second round, I'm not sure. This dude's a first-round tight end. And I realize first-round tight ends have not historically been, super awesome unless they're like truly elite talents. Michael Mayer is going to do everything within Josh McDaniels' system. And I mean everything. He's going to line up. He's going to block well as an inline blocker. He's going to be able to kick out to the slot and operate well. He's going to be able to, kind of live in the backfield a little bit and get on the move. Michael Mayer is a truly terrific talent that I'm a little bit mad that the Raiders were able to add to their roster. I think a lot of people are going to naturally kind of look at him and go, okay, so he's going to replace Darren Waller, completely different players. So you're not asking him to, run the seam in the same way as Darren Waller. You're not asking to volume feed him the ball in the same way as Darren Waller's. But within every single play that Josh McDaniels is going to call, Michael Mayer is going to have a very specific thing that he's going to do well and going to contribute well within that specific play. So I think this was a great pick for the Raiders. I'm a little mad that they ended up with him and get another truly great tight end to add to their roster here. It just isn't going to matter truly because of what they have on their offense, but a really good pick nonetheless.
So I'm sitting here and I feel like it's only fair. I went with Kent's, like Kent was the leader of the hater bandwagon for Jalen Hurts, the player to watch last time. So this time I'm going to go with the guy that he was like the leader of the fan base for. He was driving the bus for the Aiden O'Connell hype train. Mm-hmm. So Aiden O'Connell's going to come in. He's probably slated as the third string quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders. But here's a guy that if you listen to our show, the draft shows, Kent was pounding the table from like round 5 on every single time we did a mock draft to get Aiden O'Connell into a Chiefs uniform. He ended up in the division. He got the division right. So he's with the Raiders. Let's see if Aiden O'Connell can go out there and beat out Brian Hoyer for the backup job. Maybe he beats out a slightly injured Jimmy G for the starting job, and then we get to see Kent's guy line up across from our Kansas City Chiefs. Reigning world champions.
I truly believe that Aiden O'Connell is taking snaps this season. I really, truly believe that.
I do too. Hashtag the under on Jimmy Garoppolo. No, I shout out Aiden O'Connell. I'm happy for him. I wish it wasn't in Vegas, but I am happy for him getting drafted in the 4th round. Speaking of Josh McDaniels just trying to copy paste New England, Jacoby Myers is in the building. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know if Josh McDaniels hates Hunter Renfrow, but weird fit. Don't like it, but they'll figure it out, I guess. But hey, another example of the Raiders trying to carbon copy the Patriots without Tom Brady. Just fantastic. Do we even need to ask? We could do players to watch. Players to watch. We got to do players to watch still, don't we?
Yeah. I'll go Max Crosby because he's the defensive player that matters on this side of the ball. Sure, there's other guys. Tyree Wilson, 1st round pick. I like Tyree Wilson a lot. He's got some room to grow into the role. I'm not expecting a ton of year 1 out of him. Chandler Jones could still be good. I'm a Nate Hobbs and a Trevon Moehrig fan as well. Like I am. But it's realistically the Max Crosby show. This defense is going to go just as far as he goes. Maddie kind of alluded to some of this before. He could play at a defensive player of the year level, and it may not matter. Like, it really might not. Like, that's how bad the rest of this defense is and how high of a potential that he has. So I think that he is the entire tempo of this defense, and he is the reason that it could be not, bottom 3rd of the league. But that is a lot of pressure to put on that singular guy to say, okay, you got to go out and do all of this yourself. It's just a lot.
Man, players to watch on this team's rough, huh?
Yeah.
Mahomes. Just watch Mahomes.
I would go with Hunter Renfrow because there was the rumors that he was maybe on the trade block. They're shopping. Heck, they might even still cut him. So I guess I'm watching to see if he's even on the team, right? But what's happening with Hunter Renfrow? Because 2 years ago, he was seen as this excellent receiver that everybody's going to love. And then last year, there was a slight step back, which was odd given Josh McDaniels coming in. You would think that he was going to be the guy to perfectly use Hunter Renfrow. And it never seemed to mesh. Maybe part of getting Waller out the door somehow is going to help that. Maybe a second year in the system is going to help that. I don't know. But I'm intrigued what Hunter Renfrow does this second season here with Josh McDaniels.
Tyree Wilson, I'm very fascinated to see him because if you're looking at the way that the Raiders really start turning this thing around a little bit, it's going to be continuing to those assets to continue to develop on the defensive line. So Chandler Jones bounce back, Max Crosby stays Max Crosby, and then you got Tyree Wilson in the mix here. That is a monstrous human. I was watching the NFL draft the other day, and watching him come out of the green room is just terrifying. That is you don't appreciate the kind of metrics that guy possesses now. There's a lot of football that he has to learn still. But man, if he's developing, that's a scary sign because that's a building block that the Raiders have to kind of help, accelerate this thing until they find a quarterback that's remotely capable of sniffing Patrick Mahomes, which still won't happen. How does this team beat the Chiefs? Can we just move on?
Yeah, they don't. They just don't. They don't. And it was a little shocking to me to see some NFL analysts when they were looking through the Chiefs schedule picking the Raiders on a short week to kind of clip the Chiefs. I understood, trying to find that one loss that the Chiefs are going to try and have throughout the season, picking the short week against a divisional opponent, all of that aligns. Just by the time these two teams are going to meet, who knows what Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be? Who knows if they're going to be playing hard for Josh McDaniels anymore? I just don't think that there is a truly viable path short of the Chiefs completely overlooking them for the Raiders to come up with a victory.
Man, I don't know how they get there. Even on a Chiefs bad day, I don't know how they get there. It's going to be one of those any given Sunday type of things where everything goes wrong for the Chiefs, everything goes right for the Raiders. The problem is I just don't know if they have the grit, the mentality. They're not the Colts. They can't get the Chiefs and drag them into this mud and rock fight and then come out on top because the Chiefs keep shooting themselves in the foot. The Raiders will do the same, and they're not going to play a clean game. It's like, it's hard to get there.
Josh McDaniels will be blaming Jimmy Garoppolo by this point in the season when they play. So there's that. Who's the Chiefs' non-Mahomes MVP, Craig?
Anybody on the Chiefs' defensive line. This offensive line is not good. It's really going to struggle with whoever is lined up opposite it. Obviously, Chris Jones is the easy answer here, but I picked him already. I've also picked Charles Omenihu. I've also picked Mike Dana. Let's go Turk Wharton. Turk Wharton in a late season performance shows up, has 3 pressures and a sack, impacts the game throughout it. I just don't think that they've got enough to stop what the Chiefs have on their interior, and certainly not on the edges, but it's going to be kind of a bloodbath in the trenches for the Raiders.
So appreciate the Pats fans coming in here to watch as well. We always appreciate any fans from other teams. I'm going to go with Travis Kelce as the Chiefs MVP, not named back. It's a bit. It's the bit. I'm choosing Travis Kelce every week. If you skip this part, you won't know that next week. It'll be a nice, fun surprise for you if you hear listening.
This is a bit?
Wait until you hear my awesome explanation that I come up with off the hip next week, guys.
My non-Mahomes MVP is Blaine Gabbert. He's going to eat some precious snaps up when this game's out of hand, so Patrick Mahomes doesn't have to. That is going to do it for the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening and supporting KC Sports Network. We genuinely appreciate it. Shout out the Bay Area for catching another L at the hands of Patrick Lavon Mahomes. We'll catch you.